I was 5 years old when I first understood that my sister Bethany hated me, not disliked, not found annoying, actual hatred. It was a strange realization for a child, my small heart crumbling as I realized someone who shares your blood could look at you with such cold detachment. Bethany was 10 years older than me, already a teenager when I was still learning to tie my shoes. You'd think having such an age gap would make her protective of me, maybe even maternal. However, she didn't. She resented me from day one, even though I had tried for years to understand why. My earliest memories are stained with her hostility. My parents, Victor and Eleanor, both worked long hours, him at the university where he taught, her at the law firm downtown. They often left Bethany in charge of watching me. Just for a few hours, they'd say, kissing me while I swallowed back tears. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, Bethany's fake smile would drop. "Time for bed, Olivia," she'd say, even if it was only 6 p.m. "But it's still light outside," I'd protest weakly. "Doesn't matter. Go to your room," she'd march me upstairs, push me into my bedroom, and then came the sound I still hear in my nightmares, the distinct click of the lock. My room would transform from a safe haven into a prison cell. Bethany had convinced my parents to keep the outside lock for my safety when I was a toddler. Now it was her weapon. "Bethany, please let me out," I'd call, my small fists barely making a sound against the wooden door. She'd hiss from the hallway. "You need to be quiet, Olivia. You know what happens to noisy little girls, right? The monsters under the bed get hungry." I'd freeze, my heart pounding. "There's no monsters," I'd whisper, trying to convince myself more than her. "What's that scratching sound?" "I think one's waking up." She'd scratch her fingernails against the bottom of my door, and I'd leap onto my bed, pulling my feet up, convinced that something was about to grab my ankles. I'd sit there for hours, too terrified to move, too afraid to even reach for the light switch. When I'd hear my parents' car in the driveway, Bethany would quickly unlock my door and whisper, "If you tell them, I'll make it worse next time. They won't believe you anyway." But once, when I was about 6, I did tell them. My parents had returned to find me pale and trembling, with tear tracks dried on my cheeks. "Bethany locked me in my room again and said there were monsters under the bed," I said, my voice shaking. My dad's brow furrowed, but before he could speak, Bethany rolled her eyes dramatically. "There she goes again with her stories. Remember last week when she said she saw microphones in her room?" That had been a real concern after reading about surveillance, and Bethany knew it. But my parents nodded, exchanging knowing glances. My dad said firmly, "Olivia, you shouldn't make up stories about your sister. She gives up her time to watch you, and you should be grateful." Grateful. That word became a splinter in my heart, festering for years afterward. How could I be grateful for torment, for fear, for the certainty that in my own home, my word meant nothing against hers? The pattern continued for 2 more years. Bethany babysitting me, locked away, and the psychological torment growing more elaborate. Sometimes she'd whisper about hidden cameras watching my every move. Other times she'd describe devices that could hear everything I said when the lights went out. When Bethany graduated high school and announced she was going to college in Michigan, 5 states away, I pretended to be sad for my parents' sake. But inside, I felt a balloon of relief expanding in my chest. Freedom. Safety. The possibility of a normal childhood. The day she left, I watched from the window as my parents hugged her in the driveway. When the car finally disappeared down the street, I walked to my room and searched every corner for the devices she'd convinced me were there. But nothing was found. No cameras and stuffed animals, no microphones under furniture. The only monster had driven away, and I had 4 whole years before I'd have to see her again. Those years were the best of my childhood. Without Bethany's constant presence, my parents and I grew closer. They weren't just academic professionals who dropped in to check my homework between lectures. They became real people with laughter and stories and weekend plans that included me. Mom taught me about famous legal cases that shaped history. Dad showed me how to conduct simple science experiments and didn't mind when they made a mess. We had documentary nights and chess competitions. It was like finally being allowed into the family I'd been orbiting for years. But the shadow of Bethany's return loomed over each holiday break and summer vacation. She'd arrive with designer bags and stories about her sophisticated college life, bringing expensive gifts for our parents, a first edition signed biography for Dad, an antique law book for Mom. For me? Nothing. Not even a bookmark or a pencil from her university bookstore. The first time it happened at Christmas when I was 9, I couldn't hide my hurt as I watched Mom and Dad unwrap their presents while my hands remained empty. "Where's Olivia's gift?" Mom asked, noticing my expression. Bethany waved dismissively. She wouldn't appreciate anything intellectual. "I'll get her a children's science kit on the way home if it's that big a deal." But she never did. And the next holiday it was the same pattern, and the next. Eventually, I stopped expecting anything and learned to immerse myself in my studies when she visited. My high school was a refuge from the family drama. I wasn't popular, but I excelled academically, had supportive friends, and teachers who recognized my scientific aptitude. By 17, I had Princeton applications ready, a research internship at the local laboratory, and a future that seemed refreshingly Bethany-free. Then came the announcement, "Your sister's getting married in March," Mom said one night over dinner, her face glowing with excitement. "Isn't that wonderful?" "Great," I nodded, calculating in my head that would be during my spring break of senior year. I didn't love the idea of spending my vacation at Bethany's wedding, but maybe it would be a chance to finally be included as an adult family member. Maybe I'd even be a bridesmaid. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. 2 weeks later, Bethany swept into our house with a diamond ring and her fiancé in tow. Warren seemed nice enough, quiet, well-dressed, with a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. Perfect match for my sister, I thought uncharitably. "We're planning an intimate ceremony," Bethany announced over dinner. "Actually, we've decided to have a wedding for intellectually mature guests only." The table went quiet. Dad cleared his throat. "What exactly does that mean?" "Warren and I want sophisticated conversation and academic atmosphere. No distractions." Bethany's eyes fixed on me. "No one who can't contribute to meaningful discussions." I stared back, the meaning crystal clear. "I'm starting Princeton in the fall. I've already been published in the school science journal. Rules are rules, Olivia. I'm sure you understand." I looked to my parents for support. Mom was studying her plate. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "It's Bethany's wedding," he finally said. "She gets to decide how she wants it." "Exactly," Bethany said triumphantly. "Besides, someone needs to organize the research materials while everyone's gone." I felt like I'd been slapped. They were all going, my parents, relatives from both sides, family friends, everyone except me. Left behind like an unwanted lab specimen. After dinner, I retreated to my room, fuming. I didn't cry. I was too angry for tears. Part of me wasn't even surprised. This was classic Bethany, finding the perfect way to exclude me while appearing intellectually justified to everyone else. The day of the wedding, I stood in the driveway watching my parents drive away in their formal clothes, my heart sinking. For the next 8 hours, I wandered the empty house, reading research papers and tried not to think about what was going on in the wedding hall. That evening, when my parents returned, they were full of stories, the elegant decorations, the sophisticated vows, the gourmet food. I nodded and smiled in all the right places, playing the role of the interested daughter. 3 days later, scrolling through social media, I saw Bethany posting her wedding album. I shouldn't have looked it, but curiosity got the better of me. There, in the family photos, stood my cousin Violet, grinning in a tasteful blue dress. Violet, who was exactly 2 months younger than me. I zoomed in on the photo, my stomach clenching. But no, it was definitely Violet. My hand shook as I dialed her number. "Oh," she said casually. "Bethany said the intellectual maturity thing was just a guideline, not a strict rule. Didn't you know?" I hung up without responding. The betrayal burned in my throat. It wasn't about having intellectually stimulating conversations. It was about excluding me specifically. And everyone, including my parents, had gone along with it. That moment changed something fundamental in me. I stopped trying to earn Bethany's approval or my parents' understanding. I focused on graduating, securing research scholarships, and planning my escape to Princeton. The next time I saw Bethany was at Thanksgiving, 6 months later. I was freshly 18 and heading to Princeton in January. She made small talk about married life, and I responded with polite disinterest. The elephant in the room, her wedding deception, went unmentioned. My college years flew by. I studied biochemistry, made friends who knew nothing about my family dynamics, and gradually built a life that was entirely my own. I came home for major holidays but kept my visits brief. Bethany appeared intermittently, usually when she wanted to showcase her success to our parents. Then came the baby announcements, first Caleb, then Hunter, and finally Liam. 3 boys in 6 years. Bethany quit her real estate job to become a full-time mom, and suddenly our parents' house became her unofficial childcare center. I had earned my doctorate by then and landed a position at a biotech firm. My house was 40 minutes from my parents but light years from the chaos that now defined their home. Every time I visited, there was evidence of my nephew's destruction, damaged books, broken antiques, crayon on artwork. I tried to time my visits for when Bethany and her children weren't there, but sometimes our paths crossed. The boys would run wild, screaming and throwing things, while Bethany scrolled through Instagram, posting perfectly filtered family photos. When I suggested they use indoor voices or not touch Dad's rare manuscripts, Bethany would snap, "Don't tell my gifted children what to do." So I didn't. Instead, I started avoiding family gatherings altogether, until the phone calls began. "Olivia, dear, could you come over tomorrow?" Mom's voice had that particular tone, exhausted but trying to sound calm. "We could use some help reorganizing." Bethany just picked up the boys. The first time I went without complaint. I spent 4 hours helping my parents restore order. The second time I gritted my teeth but still went. The third time something in me snapped. "Mom, why are you always calling me to clean up after Bethany's kids? Why isn't she doing it?" There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, sweetie. You're right. We shouldn't have asked." I hung up feeling guilty but resolute. That evening I called Bethany directly. "You need to stop treating Mom and Dad's house like your personal childcare center," I said without preamble. "Dad is 70 with high blood pressure. Mom's arthritis is getting worse. They shouldn't be cleaning up after your kids." "Mind your own business, Olivia," she replied coldly. "This is between me and them. They're my parents too, and you're taking advantage of them. I'm raising 3 gifted children. What would you know about that?" Her voice dripped with condescension. "Your research doesn't talk back. Don't stick your PhD where it doesn't belong." The line went dead. I called my parents immediately after hanging up with Bethany. My hands were shaking with anger, but my voice was steady. "Mom, Dad, I want you to stop babysitting for Bethany unless she agrees to clean up after her kids. Those boys are completely out of control, and Bethany doesn't lift a finger." There was a long silence. Then Dad cleared his throat. "We'll talk to her." I wasn't sure they would, but a week later I got a furious call from Bethany. "What the hell did you say to Mom and Dad?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "They told me I can't bring the kids over unless I clean up afterward." "Good," I said simply. "You had no right to turn them against me. Who's going to watch my kids now? Do you know how expensive childcare is? Not my problem. You chose to have them. Take some responsibility." She hung up on me again. I later heard from Mom that Bethany did start cleaning up after her visits, not thoroughly, but enough that my parents weren't left with a disaster zone. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. For once, I hadn't backed down. Life went on. I focused on my research, earning recognition in my field. I dated casually, but nothing serious stuck until I met Max at a medical conference. He was brilliant, compassionate, and refreshingly straightforward. After years of walking on eggshells with my family, his honesty was like oxygen. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on my 28th birthday with an elegant ring and a promise of a drama-free future. I said yes, immediately, but even as we celebrated, a dark thought intruded: the wedding would mean facing Bethany again. "We could elope," Max suggested when I explained my concerns. "Hawaii. Just us." But I shook my head. "I won't let her rob me of a proper wedding." I want my colleagues there, your family, everyone, except my nephews. Max raised an eyebrow. Bold move. Your sister won't like that. I know, I took a deep breath. But after seeing what her kids did to my parents' anniversary party last month, the destroying Dad's rare books, the interrupting the toasts, I can't risk it. So I made the announcement on social media, we're thrilled to be planning our wedding for next June. Note, this will be a child-free event. No guests under 16, please. We love your little ones but want everyone to enjoy an intellectually stimulating evening. Most responses were positive. Colleagues with children promised to arrange sitters. Max's family completely understood. My post received likes and supportive comments, all except from Bethany. A week later, I went to my parents for our usual Saturday dinner. Walking through the front door, my heart sank as the familiar chaos hit me, shrieks, thumps, something breakable crashing. Bethany and her boys had happened to stop by. Caleb, now 12, ran past me with a water gun. Hunter, 8 years old, was jumping from sofa to love seat, his shoes leaving dirt marks on the upholstery. Liam, the youngest at 6, was pulling books off shelves and dropping them on the floor. Bethany sat at the dining table with Mom, calmly sipping coffee as if surrounded by perfect tranquility. Halfway through dinner, Bethany casually mentioned my wedding. I'll need to know the exact schedule so I can plan around the boys' activities. I put down my fork. The boys aren't invited. It's adults only, as I mentioned in my post. She laughed. That doesn't apply to family, obviously. It applies to everyone. No exceptions. But I can't leave them for a whole day. I'll have to bring them. I stared at her, wondering if she was truly this oblivious or just testing me. No, you won't. You'll need to find a sitter. There's no one I trust with them for that long. They're coming with me. Her tone was final, as if the matter was settled. Bethany, I said slowly, let me be clear. If you show up with your children, you won't be allowed in. It's my wedding, my rules. You're just doing this to get back at me, she snapped, her composed facade cracking, because I didn't let you come to my wedding. I blinked in surprise. What? That was 10 years ago. This has nothing to do with that. Liar. You've always been vindictive, always making up stories about me. I gestured to where Hunter was now using the curtains as a climbing rope. This is why your kids aren't invited. They're completely out of control, and you do nothing about it. Bethany stood up so abruptly her chair fell backward. Boys, we're leaving. She stormed out, children trailing behind her like destructive ducklings, leaving the usual disaster in their wake. After they left, Dad and Mom gave me disappointed looks. Was that necessary? Mom asked. You could have handled it more diplomatically. Like how? By letting her walk all over me like she always has? No thanks. Dad sighed. They're just children, Olivia. They're family. Look around you, I said, gesturing to the chaos. Do you want this happening during my vows? During our first dance? While everyone's trying to enjoy a meal that Max and I are paying a fortune for. They didn't have an answer for that. 2 days later, Bethany posted a long, self-pitying rant on social media, heartbroken that my sister is excluding my precious boys from her wedding out of spite. Family should come first, not petty grudges from the past. Hashtag family first, hashtag heartbroken mom. Instead of responding directly to Bethany, I simply commented, to clarify, our adult-only policy applies to all guests under 16, not just specific children. We want an elegant evening that all guests can enjoy intellectually and socially. What I didn't expect was the flood of comments that followed, not from our friends, but from relatives. Those boys knocked over my grandmother's antique vase at the family reunion. They pulled the tablecloth off at Thanksgiving and shattered my heirloom china. One of them bit my daughter during the Christmas party while Bethany was busy taking Instagram photos. Bethany deleted her post within hours. The weeks leading up to my wedding were a blur of final arrangements, dress fittings, and nervous anticipation. Bethany had gone suspiciously quiet after her social media backfire, no calls, no texts, no more complaints to our parents. The silence made my stomach knot with anxiety. That's when my phone rang. It was Violet. "Olivia, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I was talking to Jen yesterday, you know, Bethany's friend from Princeton, the one who was her maid of honor. According to Jen, Bethany is planning to have the boys accidentally spill red wine on your dress during the reception, and Caleb is supposed to push over your wedding cake." Jen felt horrible about it and confided in me. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence, my hands trembling. Even for Bethany, this was a new low, not just ignoring my wishes but actively plotting to ruin my wedding day. I told Max, expecting him to be as shocked as I was. Instead, he was eerily calm. "We'll hire security," he said simply. "Give them pictures of Bethany and the boys. No drama, no scene. They just don't get in." We hired 2 security guards from a professional firm, gave them photos of Bethany and her children, and instructed them not to allow them past the entrance under any circumstances. The morning of my wedding arrived with perfect blue skies. As my bridesmaids helped me into my dress, I felt a surprising sense of calm. Whatever happened with Bethany, I was marrying the man I love. That was what mattered. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. At 3:30, my phone buzzed with a text from security. "Subjects have arrived with 3 minors. Proceeding as instructed." I took a deep breath and handed my phone to my maid of honor. "Don't tell me anything else about my sister unless the building's on fire." The ceremony was beautiful. Walking down the aisle toward Max, seeing his face light up, in that moment, Bethany didn't exist. We exchanged vows under an arch of white roses, and when the minister pronounced us husband and wife, the applause felt like a release of years of tension. It wasn't until the reception that reality intruded. Mom appeared at my elbow as I greeted guests, her face tight with anger. "How could you?" she hissed. "Your sister is outside in tears because those guards you hired wouldn't let her in." I kept my smile in place for nearby guests. I made it clear children weren't welcome. She chose to bring them anyway. Their family, Olivia. What do you expect her to do with them? The same thing every other parent here did, find a babysitter. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Your dad and I are going to take her home. I hope you're satisfied with yourself." I watched as they slipped out, choosing Bethany yet again. It hurt, but less than I expected. Perhaps I'd been preparing for this moment my entire life. The rest of the reception was perfect. Our friends danced, relatives shared stories, and Max's grandmother taught everyone a folk dance that had us all laughing. Our cake remained upright, my dress stayed pristine, and no one threw food or climbed the curtains. 2 days after we returned from our honeymoon, I decided to call my parents. I thought they deserved to know why I'd hired security, to understand I wasn't just being vindictive. "Mom and Dad, there's something you should know. Bethany was planning to have her kids ruin my wedding. Violet found out from Bethany's friend Jen that she was going to have the boys spill wine on my dress and knock over the wedding cake." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Mom's voice, cold and dismissive, "Olivia, I can't believe you're still fabricating stories about Bethany after all these years." "I'm not making it up," I protested, my heart racing. Violet heard it directly from Jen. "Why would I lie about this?" Dad sighed heavily. "You've always had quite an imagination, Olivia. Always seeing the worst in your sister. This has gone too far." I closed my eyes, transported back to childhood, Bethany locking me in my dark room, whispering about hidden cameras, then calling me delusional when I told our parents. "I didn't make it up," I said quietly. "Violet can confirm it." "Violet has always taken your side," Dad dismissed. "Bethany was very hurt by your actions." I said back to them, "I've been hurt by hers my entire life, but that doesn't seem to matter to any of you." The line went silent for a moment. "We should discuss this in person," he finally said. "I don't think so, Dad. I'm done explaining myself. I love you both, but I won't apologize for protecting my wedding day from Bethany's spite." "So that's it? You're just cutting us off?" I sighed. "No, I'm setting boundaries. When you're ready to see me as an equal member of this family, not just Bethany's troublesome little sister who needs to fall in line, I'll be here." That was 6 months ago. Since then, silence. I hear updates through Violet. Bethany still dumps her children on my parents regularly. The boys are still destructive, still disrespectful. My parents are increasingly exhausted, dealing with health issues that make keeping up with 3 unruly children nearly impossible. But they won't set boundaries with Bethany, and I won't pretend everything is okay. Sometimes I dream about reconciliation, Sunday dinners where everyone behaves civilly, holidays without tension, my parents finally seeing the pattern that's been clear to me since childhood. But dreams aren't reality. The reality is that Bethany was right about one thing: I was a dreamer as a child. I dreamed of a sister who would protect me instead of terrorize me, parents who would believe me instead of dismiss me, a family where love didn't come with conditions. Now I dream of different things, the family Max and I might create someday, one where no child feels less valued than another, where words like fair and respect aren't just empty concepts.